This is Chuck Sachs for Indie Opera Podcast, and James Darrah, One Festival Artistic Director and Director of Philip Glass's opera Les Enfants Terribles for Opera Omaha. Hello, James.
Hello.
Tonight completes the second One Festival. How do you feel it has all gone?
Great. I think we feel really good. It's the final day, so I also think we're quite exhausted, and we're at the end of this long
So it's
2 weeks of many things.
So just find a bed and hide in it for a day.
That starts tomorrow for all of us. Yeah.
And this is your sixth season directing for Opera Omaha, starting with Agrippina during the 2013-2014 season. What has kept you coming back to work here?
The festival is a major part of that. I think the idea to have the ability to put together a group of people that are going to make various projects has kept and has held my interest here. I think Roger White's, the general director, has a good sense of what he views as not only an opera company's mission in a city like Omaha in America today, but also the possibilities that the festival holds to influence the form and create new work and also forge new collaborative relationships among artists that otherwise haven't had the opportunity to work together.
So was Roger Weiss the one who brought you first here in that, or?
Yeah, Roger and I had met in Chicago, and then he brought me to Omaha in 2014 with the idea to bring Handel back. Handel hadn't been heard for decades in the opera company here, and so doing Agrippina in 2014 in the winter was kind of the first, in a way, leap, for a company that had otherwise been a standard rep regional company. And
I know, I've looked at the season.
Yeah, and Roger basically proposed really stretching that or building on that, and I like that. It's helped in a way. Coming here has also helped define my ideas about opera elsewhere. When I travel to other companies or make work elsewhere, I'm always thinking about what is an opera company's role in its community in the 21st century. And I think, especially in America, that's a really important and though oft discussed, maybe not completely understood idea.
So when did the idea to create One Festival start for you? And I guess with Roger, about when was the inkling, in your eye?
Yeah, there was a good series of events. I mean, one of the other things Roger had asked me to do early on, which I had interest in, was he actually had me direct and kind of curate the annual fundraising gala. So while that's for a very specific group of 400 people and various philanthropists and supporters of the opera, as well as new people and influencers in the community and people that are small business owners or have ties to Omaha as a city, it was to rethink what a company could do as a gala and as a fundraiser. Can this have a spirit beyond just a formal dinner that is like the same thing you go to the rest of the year if you're one of those people in the community?
Yeah.
And the spirit of that, though it was for a very sort of niche audience, the spirit of that we realized had wider appeal. And also the history of the company involved a festival. They had a thing called the Fall Festival here for many years.
Yes, he mentioned
which
that.
I was never around for, but I think that was part of the DNA of the opera company. And though long dormant, I think Roger had the idea to bring that back. So he approached me about 2 years ago, and that was kind of right at the same time that I was doing some work with Missy Mazzoli and Royce Fabric on a new piece, and they had been commissioned by W&O to write Proving Up, which was set in Nebraska.
Right.
And so it kind of all, those kind of timelines converged in a really interesting way, where I thought the process of making opera in America today resembles something that doesn't have a festival outlet, actually, right? That individual companies can commission individual pieces and embed them in their seasons. And while great, and while I think that has yielded good work, I didn't feel like that was doing anything to change the culture of what new music and classical music and opera is capable of in the next 10 or 20 years. That there was really this separation between what professional companies were willing to take on versus what indie opera companies were willing to do. And I thought how interesting to sort of have a professional company in the middle of the country create a residency program where the whole prompt is artists doing new work.
And so that sounds like that was definitely part of your goals for the first festival. And do you feel you achieved them with that?
Yeah, I think that was good. We had two of our projects go on to further life, which I think is a great indicator.
Right, I got to see Proving Up in New York.
Proving Up came to New York, and then Adam Larson made a whole kind of multimedia experience of John Adams' piece Darrah at Big Sur. And that piece went to the Cincinnati Symphony with Tracy Silverman playing live, and Chris Roundtree, who had actually been here for Proving Up, conducted that performance. So that felt very much in our artistic family, and it was great to have a piece that we had made here and really created here go on to a further life and be seen by people in a completely different city. So I think that's part of to me an indicator of like, okay, we have our hand on the pulse of something right in that sense. But more so, I think it was that we didn't lose in the second year. This second year has been about artists coming together to create new work, even with something, as much in the standard repertoire as Faust, that has a very spin on it and a creative team and a musical sort of value to it that is, in a way, exemplifies what I think the festival has to offer.
So, I mean, do you feel that the lessons you learned from one festival you were able to put into action now for this year's festival?
I hope so. I'm going to say yes. I think so. But, at the same time, like, I think it's interesting because we kind of made the decision early on that we didn't want to be the place that always did one standard rep piece and one world premiere. And I think I'm more interested in the long game with the world premieres. Like, I want to follow through with composers that I find interesting and actually help create new projects. And Proving Up had already been in motion by the time the one festival came around. Right. So that was, as I said, that was like that fortuitous chance fate meeting that helped ignite the festival, and really now it exists because of that timeline. But we're talking about a couple of new productions and world premieres with some composers for the next 2 and 3 years that I think are really exciting.
So, I mean, you mentioned about artists you worked with last season. Which creative artists in this year's festival have you worked with before? And what did you feel they could be bringing to this season's productions?
Yeah, I think in the case of our Philip Glass opera and the way that it worked out, that would be the one that I would direct. I'm always interested in, I've been here for a few years, and I'm really conscious of wanting to use the festival to maybe give people an opportunity or a voice or an outlet that they wouldn't normally otherwise have. So the creative team for me on this project is entirely new to me. I've never worked with DM Wood, our lighting designer, Kimi Asaf, who is our costume designer, and Yuki Izumihara, who was our scenic designer. This is a new creative team in a way. And additionally, so they're in a way all new. Right. In that sense, to the festival. DM had been here for Fiona Shaw's Medea production that we had last year to light that. So me working with her was new. But Gustavo Sansano, our choreographer, had been here before for Semele, which we co-produced with Opera Philadelphia. So actually, the Opera Philadelphia Festival has our Semele going this fall, and that's with the choreographer who choreographed this.
Excellent, and I will be seeing that.
Oh, good. The exciting thing was that with this piece, the Semele is very different in terms of what it demands. I think just by nature of Handel. Right. And Philip Glass wrote this to be a dance opera. He doesn't really define what that is, but it was exciting to me to think that Gustavo could come back here. And last time he was in Omaha, the festival didn't exist. So he was here for a month, and at the end there were 2 performances of Semele. Yeah, and it's very different than 50 plus performances of a 2-week festival. And I think bringing him into that family and this environment and this creative environment was intentional, and I think yielded really interesting results. I mean, there's some really intense contemporary dance in this piece.
I'm looking forward to it because I saw the production at BAM, which was the start in my chance to see the 3 Philip Glass operas based on the Cocteau, and I fell in love with this piece then. And the story and the concept, but it also, because for me, that's the kind of work I do, into the integration of artists. It's like, not you dance and you sing, and it's like, no. And So I'm looking forward to this a lot.
Great.
And this is great. I'll make a point of reaching out to Frank to talk to Gustavo for Philadelphia. But also, you have Ellen Reed's work here.
Yes,
and I
exactly.
know you worked with her on Prism, which I didn't miss. I missed when it was in New York, unfortunately. What was that like? I mean, building that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, Ellen and I had been working on Prism at the time that we were planning this year, and kind of as a prompt to her, I said, our timeline is such that obviously I couldn't a year out sort of say, we want to do another opera of yours, or like write us a new opera. But I did say, like, okay, we're building this opera. You're really interesting. I really think she's fascinating as a composer, and she and I the two of us had always talked about ideas of things that were just dream projects. And so because of the festival, I just said, about a year ago, I said, if you came, what would you want to do? That we're doing Prisms, we're already doing this opera in LA and New York, and what is another idea that you have that is a crazy idea that no one wants to do, or that you've had trouble doing elsewhere?
Right.
And she was the one that said, well, I really want to write an opera for like a giant playground that's musical. I'm like, okay, that's and it's no lie that I was like, okay, like maybe we could do that, and that sounds like a festival event. And so the combination of us working on Prism at a time where I was planning this year was how that that came about. And it really was, I think it's in the spirit of the festival that I wasn't like, hey, we're going to program this piece and like, can you write music for it? It was more like, what you're an artist we're interested in, what do you want to make, and how can we help you do that?
And it was really exciting and interesting and fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great. It has a twofold purpose, right? I mean, in one sense, Opera Omaha and the One Festival has now commissioned this 20-minute piece from Ellen Reed that is written for mezzo-soprano for that instrument.
Right.
But in addition to that, we've had a huge number of people interact with both the festival and Ellen Reed's piece that have never been to an opera before.
Yeah. And I imagine that's also coming out of the Cine Sound work. Because I know when I was there was a lot of parents with children.
Yes, exactly.
And it was like...
that are hearing that ensemble and are hearing our musicians and are
exposed
to our festival.
Not a normal audience for ICE at all.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to watch.
That's great.
And so... is there any kind of preview you can give us about next season?
Yeah, next season, I mean, they've announced the operas. They always announce our sort of anchor productions. Yes. Interestingly, I also love coming here because I can kind of challenge myself. So I think Les Enfants is a perfect example of like a directorial challenge where there's no stage direction, there's giant interludes, and you have to do something interesting and like make it make sense. And you're kind of like in cocktail world, which also doesn't make sense by its nature.
Right.
And next year, I was like, one of the things that like I have never really directed that I don't know what I would do with is bel canto opera. Like I just don't do it. And so I'm like, I'm going to do Capuletti. And so I'm doing this like, this thing that's in a way foreign to me, but is it's with Daniela Mack, who is also in Semele, and Adriana Chuchman, who's been here before in Flight, and John Adams, A Flowering Tree. So the festival and the company here and myself, we have a relationship with Adriana, and her singing Giulietta, and that was one of the things she wanted to do. So we're going to do a new production of that and make that make sense, and so, and make that a festival event. And that's our main stage show. And then I invited Chris and David Alden did a lot of work here actually early on in their career. And so in a way for Chris Alden, it's a homecoming, but he wanted to do something site specific and he wanted to do something interesting. And I have always loved Stradella's San Giovanni Battista, the St. John the Baptist Oratorio. And I was like, in a way it's made for Chris Alden in my mind. Like the idea of him doing a Salome story, that is completely early music oratorio seemed to make sense. And I know he'll create an event out of that. So we've announced those. And then everything else, we're talking with a composer about a piece. And we're talking about... I'm really interested in that series, this kind of secondary series, being things that are unexpected but that also relate to opera. And so I'm actually talking with a couple of designers about proposing projects that are visual and musical. And we're talking with, the same idea of bringing musicians, ensembles,
Right.
that sort of thing is continuing. But yeah, I would say there's some exciting things in the work that I can't quite talk about yet.
That's understandable, but that's a good preview for people. And,
good.
And so this is great, and I'm going to see this. I can't wait to see this, and I wish you good rest after this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.